Well, thank you very much, Femi. I think what I would do to maximize time you have for the coffee break is to ask the panel to sit down, and then we'll move through this panel in the next 35 minutes until we have the coffee break. As we have heard a lot in the last day or two, that the 20th century really was about investing in outputs and supply side and to a large extent profit. And we are also hearing that to move into the system in which we want to live, we have to make sure that we are also investing more in welfare, in equity, as well as environmental considerations. Now, the challenge, of course, for us is that this is all very much easier said than done. So I'm very excited that we are now moving into the session where we will also focus a lot on action and investment and perspectives from very many different stakeholders who have joined us now on stage today. We have with us Klaus from the German Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We have Charles from Tetra Pak. We have Ajay from the India Farmers Union. We have Nichola from the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program that is housed at the World Bank. And we also have Christian from Arla Foods that we just heard from. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to have the next 35 minutes or 34 minutes focusing on what are the priorities for different stakeholders. How can we make sure that we can do more to align the different efforts that we're hearing a lot about in the last couple of days? And if we have time, I would like to ask the panel, if we have 100 billion we can spend tomorrow, how would you choose to spend it? And whether or not we actually have the system in place to enable us to spend it in the right way, in the right place. So I thought that we should start with Ajay. He is from the Farmers Union. How do you feel about being here? And tell us what your priorities are.
It's great to be here. And priorities, my priority, I'm a farmer myself, and my priority and the priority of my organization, Farmers Union, is farmer prosperity. And that's the precise reason we are here. We focus on policy advocacy for farmer prosperity, and that's what we also are seeing is happening here, and it's good to be here.
So what do you think are the priorities if you were to pick three things that would be our action and investment agenda?
I think it would be agriculture education and extension services, because I think those are the things where investments are not going in, and that's exactly what's required. And I would just stick to two. I would not even put the third, because till we don't get those two parameters into place, the others are not going to work out. So whatever investments we have, wherever we have them, I think they should go into the order of extension and then research, not research and into extension. I think so. Extension is the key. There's a lot of research lying, like somebody said, on the shelf. We need to get it down and make it into a practice.
Well, thank you. I understand from you and your colleagues that China currently invests something like 3 times more in research than India is. It also has now started programs to attract agricultural investment. What do you think are the main things we need to do to attract more investment in the sector?
I think what we need to do, what various governments need to do is they need to create a regulatory mechanism which is transparent. They need to create an environment of ease of doing business. And what the governments don't need to do is, give financial incentives to the private sector to put up those factories, because if the regulations are in place, transparency is in place, ease of doing business is in place, then industry will come in on its own. And if the government should have some spare money after extension and research, then all the financial subsidies should go to small processing, local food village units. They should not go to large corporate houses. It's also important not to do things, and as important it is to do some things.
Well, thank you. And we are talking about the food value chain, so we're going to go to the other end, the packaging end. Charles, what's your view on this? From Tetra Pak.
Very interesting. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Tetra Pak is a packaging company. We have a vision which is making food safe and available everywhere. But to be able to do that, we have to work across the whole of the value chain, and we have to focus on reducing waste wherever we can. We work with the smallholder farmers in something that we call dairy hubs. We work with our customers to help them with productivity improvements and to reduce waste in production. And we also work with our customers to make sure that there is affordable and right-sized packaging for the consumers in the developing world, where they need low-cost packaging, smaller sizes, And also in the developed world, where family sizes are going down and there's a need to reduce the size of packaging even there.
I mean, we will go back to waste hopefully as well later. But we just heard from the professor once removed earlier, the lesson from the health sector that he said the consumers are not that important. And yet, obviously, we have been talking quite a lot the last 2 days about the demand side questions and the role of consumers. How do you see that in your work?
Well, everything starts with the consumers. You have to deliver something that they want to consume. And our customers deliver good tasting products to them. There's also the question of the size of the products, as I mentioned before. Once you have that, once you have the demand side, and this is very important in the developing world because there's no point in developing the farming business unless you have an offtake for the product in the front end. So that's something that we work a lot on, is developing the demand side, looking at where the consumers are in their development, and then working with our customers and the value chain backwards to develop a sustainable flow of product through that chain.
Well, thank you. I was going to bring you in later, actually, Christian, but actually while we're on this topic and on the role of consumers, and then obviously we are facing changing taste around the world on dairy in different directions. How do you see the role of consumers in terms of any kind of transformation action we can take in the value chain?
I think one of the big things is food waste. And I think the consumers have a very big role to play here. But I also think that business has a role to play in inspiring the consumers how to reduce food waste. Like, for instance, we do offer a lot of recipes where you can get inspired how to use the rest of your food in your fridge. And we also drive food camps where we teach teenagers how to work with food and get the most out of food. So I think, and government should have a role to play there as well. So I definitely think food waste is one of the big items where the consumers can lean in.
So we've got quite a few ideas already emerging, obviously on the farmers' side, extension services and research, a mobilization along the value chain in itself, including those at the other side of the value chain on, for example, waste reduction, whether it's about food and packaging. Governments, we just heard that perhaps government could do better not to have direct incentives, but perhaps create the enabling environment. Klaus, what do you think?
Thanks. I think bringing in the governmental perspective here, I'm sorry to say I can't make it less complicated. It gets even more complex when you bring this perspective in. And one point is for sure, we have to look for social acceptance of innovations also. And one issue here when we are talking on this panel now about innovation in the food system is bringing more social scientists into the system. This would be one aspect.
And we need social scientists because we need to understand how society responds to innovation?
Yeah, and not to reduce innovation only on a technical innovation. Innovation might be today as well social innovation, and everything that gets invented has reactions on the society.
It's interesting you mentioned that because in the environment and climate change community, where I spend a lot of my time, we certainly are wondering how do we make learning sexy. You know, if a lot of this is about code, developing ideas, you know, a lot of stuff we need to do, we kind of know some of it, but we don't know all of it. And therefore, how do we learn quickly from each other becomes quite important. What do you think the role of the government would be in terms of enabling this kind of social innovation and fast-moving learning that we know we need in order to replicate good things that are being done?
Government can give incentives, but so I would say, what we do in Germany is having an innovation program also, where we look for industry together with researchers to invest in, for example, more resilience in the system, more efficiency. We have a program addressing resource efficiency within the process chain to have reduced amount of food wasted also within the production process. So there might be, or there is definitely a role for government also, but while doing this, we have also to look that we are not treating some parts of the economy unfairly against the other ones. So we have to, big industry has its role, it's very important, but we also have to look for small and medium-sized companies.
If I can ask you one more question, just because we are in the middle of summit season, so the G20 is coming up. How do you feel about the role of e-vehicles like the G20 and perhaps G7? The role of G20 and G7 in terms of advancing this agenda we're talking about, scaling up action and investment in the global food value chain?
It has major role since lots of other countries out of G20 are looking what are the processes that are installed there, and the international organizations are included also. And I think, as we understand it from German perspective, is to build a fair dialogue with the world within this G20, and so that's
so a fair dialogue among the countries with different stakeholders as well.
Yeah.
Can I just say that
Sure.
I think that the role of government in terms of food loss is that food loss occurs in many different places, also in industry, and sometimes it's just wasted, it's thrown out, it's incinerated, and it shouldn't be so. I mean, we should use the power of the circular economy, and the government can actually facilitate that food waste streams from one industry is transferred to another, where the best value of these products are used. So facilitation of food streams and building infrastructure to handle some of the food waste residues is definitely part of it.
I mean, in London where I live in part of Camden Council, and recently they've told us that they would only take normal rubbish every 2 weeks, but food waste and recycled products every week. And then it says on the bin they gave us that we do not want food waste in here because it will smell. And I thought that was quite interesting. And I asked the guys who were collecting rubbish recently whether there has been a change. And they said, well, actually, food waste reduction or food waste collection have gone up a lot in the last couple of weeks. And I asked Waitrose the same question, because I live around a Waitrose where they sell those bags that you put food waste. And they said, well, we've been running out since the new policy have put in place. So I think there are quite interesting things, local level, not necessarily big government level, that could be done as well. Before I would like to go deeper into the question around food loss and food waste. But before we do that, I wouldn't mind asking Nichola, who's from the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, to tell us a little bit about the kind of stuff that you see as an international institution supporting this transition of the system.
Thanks very much. I'm really delighted to be here. It's a real honor, and it's great to be able to share this panel with multiple stakeholders. That's actually what we do. We are working with multiple stakeholders. We're channeling investments. We're channeling funding to different stakeholders in different ways depending on what their needs are. Most of it is done through country. We're doing it through governments to countries. Some of it is done to private investments, and some is done very directly to farmers. And we're looking for ways to do even more of that. We actually have 5 overall priorities, and these are global priorities that were established in G8 and G20 processes at the time. So these are extremely important to us. Agricultural productivity needs to be strengthened. Farmers need to be linked to their markets. We need to help everybody to deal with issues of risk and vulnerability. We need to strengthen non-farm rural livelihoods. There's a lot of rural development that still needs to be done, jobs to be created. And we need to help to build the institutions and strengthen the capacity to deliver all of that. And just because we're not a household name, this is a program that has so far delivered on the order of $1.5 billion, most of it directly in grants. So if you'd like me to go on a bit, perhaps, I'm happy to. I understand that we've got a bit of a time thing going on, but I would love to come back on this.
Yeah, we have a bit of a time thing going on. Staring at us. Well, no, I think that's great. So we have now heard from all our speakers in terms of some of their priorities, and a lot of them have focused on, in fact, if you don't mind, supply-side questions, which are about productivity gain, stuff that we know we need, but perhaps we shouldn't use as the only driving force in terms of planning for the future. We also heard quite a lot about food losses and waste and the role of different actors. So if I may kind of go back to what we started off with from Ajay on the farmer's side, obviously it is important that we do what you suggest, which is to invest more into research and extension services in the other order you mentioned, and also making sure that we are taking into account the perspective of farmers as we have these global conversations. So if you have $100 million tomorrow to make sure the farmers or the perspectives are properly reached out, but also at the same time meeting all the needs that we wanted to have, so environmental, social, food, etc., how would you spend 100 million or billion? Or you can say trillion if you like.
I come back to extension services. You know, it's not romantic, it's not sexy, nobody wants to talk about it, but at the end of the day, that's what the farmer wants. And then, like you said, you're going to link whatever the farmer is growing to the markets, because if he does not have a market, we have a saying that when one farmer works hard, he becomes rich, but when all farmers work hard, all farmers become poor, because there's absolutely a problem that there is no demand for his produce.
So, Nichola, perhaps you can tell us a bit more about how you've been trying to facilitate that?
Yeah, actually, what we do is we work on demand-driven programs. So we ensure that we're getting ideas that are bubbling up from the ground, working with farmer organizations, working with producers, working with civil society, and also bringing together other stakeholders, bringing together governments, bringing together recipients and donor governments. I should say that we're a program that's focusing on poor countries. And so some of the conversation, our conversation about food loss and waste would be a different one actually, because it's more about what's wasted on the production side. To get to where we want to go, we don't have a cookie-cutter model. Some countries may absolutely want that extension. Others may want more of the research. Others may want not to focus on that at all. They may want to invest in nutrition-sensitive agriculture, or they may want to invest in climate-resilient agriculture. We actually see that without being told, we found out that even before COP21 had passed, so many of our countries were already investing in climate-smart or climate-resilient agriculture. Over 50% of our financing was going there, and nobody was telling them to do it. They were just doing it. Same with nutrition. We see that our countries are investing in these because they are good. They're good for their people. They're good for their farmers.
You want to come back?
Yes, I want to come back and say what you also need in developing countries, what also small farmers need is technology, and I think that technology is with the developed world, and that is what must come as aid rather than come as finances. Technology to preserve food, technology to process food, technology to transport food, I think so that technology needs to come in. And one of the issues that in the food value chain, which is the subject that we're discussing, I think so one thing which is not discussed again is corporate social responsibility to what they're selling to the farmers. It's not, I don't know if it's a big issue in Europe and in North America, but especially in the developing world, in these continents, in the South, it's a big issue because corporate companies are selling them pesticides, spurious pesticides, fertilizers. When you don't need it, you're being made to apply it. Business model's all wrong. So I think so if you want to take it a holistic picture, you need to make sure that there is responsibility and it's enforced. Because without that, health is going to suffer. You're not going to solve health problems by reducing sugar. You're going to solve health problems by making sure that the food that's coming off the farms is good. And for that, it needs to be enforced with great force.
Well, I think let's go to Christian, and I'm going to come to you, Klaus, about this. Christian?
Well, I would apply the money in application of knowledge. I mean, there's so much knowledge out there, and we need to apply it to the farmer and teach them how to do best practices and highlight what is their position, what can they achieve if they do even better, and do benchmarks between the farmers so it's a little bit competitive to be the best. So that's one way of spending money. And the other way, I agree with you completely, that you should also invest in technology. There's so much technology out there, and it will revolutionize the way that we do agriculture with the precision farming biological ways of treating your crops, it's going to revolutionize everything. So I would definitely put my money here and there.
We heard this is a positive version, and Ajay also mentioned a bit about corporate responsibility, which is to make sure that the right kind of pesticides, the right kind of technologies are being sold. How do you feel as a multinational company, or perhaps with a different type of markets, what is the role of corporates in tackling this question and problem?
Well, we need to ensure that whatever our farmers do is done responsibly, and that's why we have a quality program that covers all our farmers, 12,000 farmers in 7 different countries. It's a bit of a hatful, actually, to implement, but we also need to teach them how to work responsibly with their fertilizers, their manure, how to handle them, creating good systems of handling fertilizers so we don't emit to the atmosphere or to the waters. So we're aiming for clean waters and clean air. So the cycles need to be in balance. So that's super important for us.
Well, thanks.
I just need to come back and say, sorry for this. I need to come back and say there's so many multinational companies working out of Germany, Switzerland, America, and everywhere. Now, you have regulations in Germany and Switzerland, what you're not allowed to sell in those countries, but you come and sell those products in Asian countries, you come and sell it in African countries. And that's what corporate social responsibility is, because our regulations are not good enough, and we allow sale of products, but at least I think so on this forum we should be able to come up and everybody should agree on it that if the home country for where the company is registered is not, you're not allowed to sell that product in that company, you will not take that product and sell it to farmers like us in India. You will not take it to Africa. And that's the core issue here.
Yeah. So no more, not economic dumping, but no standard dumping. Klaus.
Difficult question, since these companies are not anymore companies that are only based.
I don't want to talk about Germany, but I'm just basically talking about the whole system.
The whole system, okay. I think what we see right now is their digitization taking place and maybe being disruptive when you look at the sensor, big data, and all these issues. Biotechnology issue or technologies taking place, and also consumers are with the increase of knowledge about what healthy nutrition is, we see that they are more and more differentiated in their needs and in their wishes on the food system. So, and we have to take this into account. And as I said in the beginning, we need to have social acceptance on this. On these developments taking place. So that's the role of government also, and it might be not so fast as some industries or some NGOs are wishing it would take place, but I think in the goal, long-running goal, sustainable food system, sustainable agriculture system, bringing them closer together, both systems, as we saw yesterday here with some very good initiatives. We are all in the same boat. And
so in a way, because it is illegal for some of these companies to sell substandard products or inputs to specific places, it's not a legal question necessarily, but one of a moral vehicle that we need to create. So we can perhaps think a little bit about the kind of platform and vehicle that in fact could enable the kind of transparent exchanges and sharing that we probably see everywhere in the world, so that we can in some sense level the playing field in a slightly different way. And Charles, packaging also has the same issue in terms of differing standards.
I think, first of all, I think any major company that uses double standards today is on very dangerous ground. And certainly that would not be something that we subscribe to, even though we are based in Switzerland.
Nothing about it.
No, I think a third of the world's food production goes to waste, and I come back to this. How do you get a product from its origin through to the consumer safely? We work on something called dairy hubs, This is a concept for a developing market. We've put 10 of these out around the world together with development agencies. These connect milk collection centres with smallholder farmers, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 farmers with a couple of cows each. We've had some fantastic results there together with our sister company, De Laval, where farmer incomes just over the space of a year increased by up to 80%. Yields of the cows go up by 80%. And this is all through bringing technology to those smallholder farmers and helping them with a guaranteed offtake of the production that they have through to dairy companies, whether they're big or small, but where Arla is a great example. Working with our dairy customers, also with technology to help them with their productivity, reducing waste, and then together with our customers, looking at the end market. And everything starts actually with the end market. You have to have consumers that are able to afford a packaged food-safe good. And that's part of our efforts in developing markets to really try to create this food-safe value chain from the beginning through to safe consumption in the consumer end.
Nichola, what can, sorry, would you?
No, I was just going to say that we talk a lot about the developing market, but a lot of the concepts, particularly on the consumer end, are also applicable in developed markets. Reduction of package sizes with family sizes reducing. Food safe is a very big issue also in developed markets, and we've got to take a responsible attitude to that as well. Understand consumption patterns and trends with the consumers, and then work with our customers to right size and ensure that we're creating as little waste as possible also in those markets.
Well, thanks. Nichola, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I do, because this is a really important conversation, and particularly in developing countries where we do work, we think that a conversation that's really pulling together all the actors is going to help to foster the kind of transparency and accountability that's needed. And how do you get that? You need to measure it. So here I'm wearing my SDGs pin. We're aligned around the achievement of the SDGs, and we would actually love to see everybody aligning even more around that, because what gets measured is what is done. That's what ends up counting. And who's doing the measuring? If we have all the voices in the room, if we have civil society who are alert to these issues, they can have a conversation with the private sector who need to do business, who need to make a profit, and that's normal. Farmers are indeed needing to make a profit. We view farmers as the ultimate entrepreneur, and we want to help them to manage their risks, and part of the risks that we see are the kinds of risks that you described. They're not the only risks that they face, but they are important. Thanks, Bernice.
I completely agree. I mean, everybody has to lean in the process. And I agree with the lady from Scaling Up Nutrition this morning saying that everybody has to view their role in a new light. And also NGOs need to change the way that they work, and they need to work with business. And we've seen very positive development in some of the places where we're working with NGOs, like in Nigeria and in Bangladesh, where the NGOs are actually leaning in and wanting to make a difference, working with business. And that is really a great experience for us. And it's also a little bit scary because not so many years ago, the relationship between business and NGOs was not fantastic. So it's a journey for both parties, I guess, building trust with each other and realizing that you can actually make a difference if you lean in, both of you, and apply the knowledge that you have each party.
Well, thank you for that. We have about 3 minutes left. I'm going to spend 30 seconds trying to summarize it, and I'm going to come back to you all, maybe 20 to 30 seconds each, on the last thing you want to say, which could include who else do you think should be on the platform. If I may roughly attempt to summarize this very rich discussion, we have heard actually quite a lot about how part of the beginning is about a more transparent food system. We heard that it could help us look at the quality of inputs. It could help us enable more waste reduction along the value chain, whether it's about food or agricultural waste. It also could become the kind of vehicle for exposing double standards, which we also believe is one of the things that certainly should be fixed. On the technology side, a lot of understanding around the need for them, yet question marks about social acceptance and also overemphasis perhaps sometimes on the physical science and less on the social science, and therefore the kind of social innovations that we also need. And we've definitely heard very loud and clear the need for particular intervention to support small farmers, making sure that the whole of the value chain is included, involved, and also part of the broader conversation that we're having is key to making sure the future will deliver what we need. Now, and this is my attempt to summarize, so now you have 20 seconds each, if I may, to say the last word. Well, why don't we start with you, sir?
Okay, perhaps one topic that wasn't addressed, it was addressed this morning once, that I think we should pay a lot of attention to is first 1,000 days of life
days.
And increased support breastfeeding and so on. Increase research in this topic. I know it's not so attractive for industry for business, but I think that's a topic when we are talking about the food system, we should address this.
Mm-hmm. The first 1,000 days, now down to 10 seconds each. Charles?
The value chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Every part of that value chain has got to look at the other parts and hold hands and try to work together to deliver something that's sustainable.
Thank you. Ajay?
I think farmers need to be part of the decision making, not just the consultation process. In all organizations, including when I came here, this is my first invite, I saw the booklet and it says Board of Trustees, and then it says Board of Advisors. There's not one farmer on it. And the same goes with every organization, talking about nutrition, talking about farmers. You call them for consultations and you send them home because they look good on the stage. Mm-hmm. But other than that, you need to have them on the board in the decision-making framework, not in the consultation framework. You need to take it a step up.
Invite them to the boardrooms.
No, not invite them. Have them as a part of the board. That's what I'm saying everywhere. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
That's how trust is built. Change your decisions because of the farmer input. That's how trust is built. Mm-hmm. We believe that strongly. Let me quote a farmer who I met in the Philippines. No farmer, no food, no future. So we deeply believe this. This is very important. We also need the other actors in. So you asked who else? Academia, consumers, recipient governments, as well as donor governments. All governments need to be in the conversation. Let me stop.
Brilliant. Christian, last word.
I think I'll just focus on food habits. I think we need to develop good food habits with the consumers, and we will definitely try to lean in, especially targeting the teenagers, saying how can you actually develop better food habits that are more sustainable in the future.
Well, thank you. I'm told time is up, and could you please join me in thanking our panel for offering their ideas?
Thank you.
And our moderator.